Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with Alexander Terzic. How do you say it?
Alexander Terzic.
Say that one more time.
Alexander Terzic.
Say it almost as well as I do. Days are long and decades are short. We're coming to you from Wintergreen Resort in Wintergreen, Virginia. Alexander, I'll just go with Alex. What do you think of this place, Wintergreen?
I think it feels like I'm on an island when I'm over here. It's quite beautiful in the fall, and I'm happy to kind of see it at that time of year.
Yeah, the leaves have changed. For me, it's a little chilly. I've spent maybe too many years in sunny Florida, but yeah, it's beautiful. It's great to have you here. Tell the listeners your internship. How did you end up? We'll go back to your passion starting with your childhood, but how did you end up here as an intern?
I spent some time during COVID teaching, and I was renting some courts from another coach who I thought would have been a master teacher, somebody that might have been able to kind of guide me through the ropes and show me a little bit about how to teach and how to work on some technique and drills and just better my teaching in a way. But that didn't happen. I ended up just renting courts and just kind of going about the teaching my own way. During that time, I was picked on a little bit about lack of technical expertise and knowledge. And it was suggested to me to look up some old videos of Rick Macy and some of his teaching ways and some of his verbiage and how he would talk about and how he would, explain to the students what they're doing and if they're doing it well or not. After viewing some of those videos and trying some of those things out on my students, I still felt like there was more. I needed to kind of get more into it and learn a little bit more about the technical side of how to actually teach and how to deliver the information. I felt that my students, they were improving, but their strokes did not look like how I wanted them to look. And I had to sort of put that on pause and then seek other ways of
Who was picking on you? Who were the critics?
Just a gentleman by the name of Ben Falkenstein. He is, once I met him, he was a soccer coach. He was a tennis coach. He was an owner of a private facility that housed a tennis court that was open during COVID. I came across him through a Facebook marketplace racket sale. I was selling some rackets because I was trying to make some money during that time because lessons were not allowed in Toronto. And he responded to one of my ads. And when I showed up at the place that we were supposed to meet, I realized there was an illegal court inside of it. So
Illegal court.
I mean, it was legal because it was owned by him and he was giving lessons there, but it was not supposed to be operating during the restrictions.
Because of COVID.
Yeah, right.
Crazy times, COVID. Well, your passion for tennis, I want to get into sales. As for our listeners, I used to tell people you have to be able to sell tennis. I don't really like that term, but I know that you were in sales for a while. But let's go back to Serbia, where you're originally from. Tell us about your beginning days in tennis.
Like a lot of kids in Serbia, I began playing soccer at an early age. It was a sport that almost everybody picked up. I was fast. I was quick. I had quick feet. My parents took me to some soccer tryouts. There's a couple local clubs in our neighborhood, and it just happened to be that near one of those clubs there was 3 tennis courts. I used to go by the courts and just kind of stare through the fence to see what was going on, but I never showed enough interest to actually say, this is what I might want to do. My parents would ask me, how was soccer? How was this? And there was times where I would leave early or I would be a little bit late because I would just watch tennis. I just wanted to see what they were doing and how that was being played. After a little while, my parents signed me up for a program that was housed indoors in a gymnasium of a school in our neighborhood. And I began playing inside on hardwood floors. that was my first sort of experience playing tennis.
In your age, obviously, when people think of Serbia, they think of Novak Djokovic. What year were you born? What year was the war?
I was born in 1983. The war began in 1990 and it lasted all the way till 1995. I began playing tennis at the age of 9. So that was about 1991, I would say, 1992. Not many kids played tennis. Not many kids wanted to play tennis. It almost seemed like that at the time we didn't have anybody that was really big in the scene in Serbia in terms of tennis, and tennis wasn't on the map. We had lots of other sports. We were big into soccer. We were big in basketball, volleyball, water polo, but tennis wasn't something that kids wanted to do. There was very small amount of facilities. The facilities that were available, they were all private. There's no public courts or any kind of government assistance or help when it comes to tennis teaching.
So you were there with your family till you were 13?
Correct.
So you left after the war?
Yes, we left after the war in 1996.
Tell us a little bit about your memories of war from your childhood.
Even though we didn't have war in Belgrade in Serbia, we were very much affected due to the fact that we had sanctions, we had power outages, we had heat outages. There was times where you had to keep track of when you had running water, when you had power, when you were able to do laundry, shower, just get your basic necessities done just to kind of get by. We also had lots of shortages in terms of like food supplies, milk, bread. I remember during that time we would have to go to the local market and everybody in the neighborhood would be storming the stores just to get bread and yogurt and milk. We didn't have vegetables. The only vegetables that would be available would have been like potatoes and some of the locally grown stuff. We didn't have anything along the lines of fruits, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, that sort of stuff. Those were just didn't have them in stores. Our shelves were empty and it was very scarce, and whatever came in disappeared very quickly.
The passion for tennis, I think before even talking about the passion of tennis is the survival. But with Djokovic, we had this course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, way back when the technologies changed. We had a webmaster, what was called a server, and our webmaster knew that we had more Americans registered on the course, but more Serbians had completed the course. The passion for tennis. And obviously Djokovic is so much in the public eye. I've heard him say that there is so much passion for tennis. Some of the people before Djokovic in the world, the pro scene, it was very difficult for Serbians to get visas and travel, correct?
Correct, yeah. I don't remember us having any sort of tournaments or any players coming into the country and playing. Nothing was advertised or hosted anywhere. We didn't have very much of a tennis scene.
One Serbian generation or the age, maybe a decade before Djokovic, how would you pronounce Dusan Vemic?
Dusan Vemic.
Dusan Vemic. I met him briefly. He practiced at our tennis school. But yeah, some of the Serbians before Djokovic had it so difficult just to travel, just to try to play. Mm-hmm. With, I know through Andy Fitzel that Dusan Vemic has looked at content we have online. It comes down to the Welby Van Horn balance system. And if people were just to reverse it and say, well, let's teach beginners, let's teach young children how to properly throw a medicine ball that weighs 3 pounds, 4 pounds. So there's not like lifting weights. And then how would they do that? How would they generate force and what would they do with their body segments? But it wasn't at Dusan at one time. He was a coach of, he's coached the Bryan brothers. Recently he was coaching Nakashima, but he was one of the coaches for Team Novak,
Mhm.
and a physical trainer had, I should say, Novak's physical trainer. They took it down, but it was a clip on YouTube, and the gentleman was just talking about, children having basic body mechanics and the position they should end up in, how they hit when they hit a forehand or a backhand, and it was basically the same as the Welby Van Horn balance system. So when you started tennis, um, you're a little bit older than Djokovic,
Correct. Yeah.
just by a couple of years.
Just a couple of years.
And so the boom, he asked, but there's the two girls before him who were so good.
My memories of tennis players from that era, I recall watching Monica Seles a lot on TV, and I remember that her father was Hungarian, and that they trained in the northern part of Serbia,
Okay.
that was close to the Hungarian border, and she was kind of like the one of the like women stars of that time for us.
No, that's a great reminder to me, because her childhood coach was the same childhood coach as Novak Djokovic.
Makes sense.
But who are the two girls? Put you on the spot here. The two Serbian girls, world-class players.
Ana Ivanovic and Jelena Jankovic.
Yeah. Same age, basically.
Yeah, very close.
Close to Djokovic's age.
Right.
They both became, they're both top 10 players in the world.
Yeah, I believe that they were the first ones to sort of rise to success, and then Novak followed after them. I think maybe Jelena was the one that rose a little bit quicker, and then Ana followed, and then Novak came.
The story of Djokovic growing up at the bottom, his parents, by a ski hill at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and the parents made pancakes in the morning and pizza in the evening. And for our listeners, what comes to your mind with the story of Djokovic? I mean, with the war, and you were there. I mean, as a young child.
I remember people saying that when you mentioned pancakes and pizza, they were basically making, it was like a bakery. They were making dough, and they were making doughy treats in the mornings, which is very common and popular for Serbians to eat in the mornings with yogurt and stuff. And then in the evening, they would substitute that, and they would sell pizza pockets, pizza breads, pizzas themselves, and stuff like that.
Djokovic is not. He's not having those morning treats anymore, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. No.
Nutrition. Well, go ahead.
So I recall some of that, and I didn't know much about him at the time, just because during that time when he was kind of still a little kid, we made our transition, and my parents relocated from Serbia to Canada. I do have memories of Janko Tipsarevic, who was a very good tennis player at the time, and he would play a lot of the local tournaments, and then a lot of the inter-Yugoslavia tournaments. He would travel to Croatia and play. He would travel to other bordering countries that did not require Serbians to have visas. I believe that at one point, I know that he became the #1 junior player in the world, and I just have a fair amount of memories of kids talking about him and his success, and how well he trained, and how he became the junior, and then obviously a future ATP star later on.
Yeah, the people that beat down the path, the people that come before, like say a Djokovic, how's it go? There's no such thing as a self-made man, self-made person. With going to Canada, that wasn't easy. How'd that go? I mean, as far as just tell us how could you enter Canada? I know at one point Canada, it had the label of the easiest country to immigrate to.
Yeah, they during the Yugoslav and the Balkan War, they were allowing refugees. They were accepting refugees from the war to come into the country. My parents applied in 1993 as landed immigrants and tried to come as a family just on our own to Canada. During that time, they were not accepting landed immigrants. They were only looking to accept refugees to kind of help out with the war situation. So we were declined. It was tough because we were strongly believing that we were going to make it. Like, we were going to come and we were going to get out of the war and escape, but it didn't happen. my father has family in Canada, and he was very persistent. Even though that he didn't speak much English, none of us spoke English. He said we should try again. Let's just try again. And my mother was said, well, maybe we don't. My mother finished German as a language. She studied at the University of Belgrade. She studied languages. She's fluent in German. And she said, maybe we should apply to Germany as well. That could be something. It's close. It's not far. We can always come back. The trips wouldn't be there's not a lot of distance between the two countries. And there's a lot of Serbian population in Germany. She didn't want to travel across the world. She didn't know anybody here in Canada. She didn't have any family in Canada. So, but she agreed, and we applied. My parents again applied in end of 95, beginning of 96. And my dad has some cousins in Canada, and we used them as sponsors. Filled out the paperwork. My parents had to travel to Italy to go for the final interview to get accepted. We got accepted, and we boarded a plane in October of 96, and we all came across and left everything behind.
So the conditions in war-torn Serbia, I mean, Yugoslavia obviously was broken into different countries. You think of the Soviet, we would say years ago, the Iron Curtain, the puppet nations, but the former Czechoslovakia, the former Yugoslavia, during that time, the tennis was not an Olympic sport. So tennis was really suppressed throughout most of the puppet nations. But during that time, Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, tennis survived.
Yeah, it was in the scene, but very little. I mean, Croatia had Ivanisevic. He was a big star. He was.
Oh, that was. But I'm talking about much earlier. Going back to, well, in Russia, you think of Alex Metrovelli from Georgia, or Morozova. I mean, you're talking about people that were in the Wimbledon final. They were actually both from Georgia. Yeah, but tennis was suppressed. There was a young gal, I should be able to tell your name. If I did take a shot at it, I would mispronounce it. But it was a Russian player who won the Orange Bowl. Then when Martina Navratilova defected, I think her name was Shamraiva. But I remember seeing her play. This is back in the 70s. And, the tennis world never saw her again. Because it was major news when Martina Navratilova defected for political asylum. So, but the conditions in Serbia, war torn. You could touch upon that. Then next go to enter a country where you can't speak English, your family can't speak English, and you're starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah, basically we arrived in the fall of 96. My dad's first cousin, he housed us. He happened to live in the suburbs of Toronto, and he had a house that could house us for a certain amount of time. We stayed there until February of 1997. I attended grade 8 at one of the local schools in the neighborhood. Like you said, not a word of English, just me. I would only raise my hand whenever there was some math questions or if there was some geography class that I could point to the map to. And it kind of just went from there. I mean, I was a little bit picked on as a kid because I was a foreigner, and maybe at that time in that part of town, we didn't have a lot of Eastern Europeans. But I got through it and just kept my chin up high and just kept trucking along.
But the conditions are tough in Serbia. But when you get to Canada, no bombs falling from the sky.
That's right.
But yet starting from scratch, conditions were tough.
Yeah, I had to learn how to communicate with everybody all over again. The only time that I spoke for the most part was when I came back home. My brother was, he's 5 years younger than me. He was in grade 3 at the time. He picked it up a little bit faster just because he was a little bit younger, and the exposure to have to be doing things in a sort of, controlled by other teachers and whatnot was more, where when you're in grade 8, maybe you can leave school property, or you can kind of mingle around with other kids, or maybe there just isn't enough supervision to kind of keep the language going and keep you, speaking and engaging with others.
Your brother being younger, I remember Belgrade in the 80s in Germany, wealthy country. Steffi Graf, Boris Becker became the best in the world. And there was all sorts of tennis jobs. And there was a couple of married couples that worked for Vic that went to Germany, and their children learned German, 3-4-year-olds. They came back. And I remember Will and Sue Arias. I remember their son. He was like 8 or 9 years old. And I just remember a setting where he was working as the translator. Because many Germans, when Vic had the Vic Braden Tennis Colleges in Germany, at one point he had one in Marbella, Spain. He had one in Switzerland. But so the young, trying to think of his name. I get stuck on names, senior moment. But the young 8-9-year-old, he was working as a translator. Because young kids, just like in tennis, they're not insecure. They don't worry about what other people think. Mm-hmm. Insecurities come into it. Tell us about tennis throughout that time. So you started tennis in Serbia. You came to Canada.
Yeah, I began playing, like I said, at the age of 9. Started in the gymnasium. I remember my very first racket was an aluminum racket. I believe it was a Rukanor. It was the only racket I had. After I got a little bit better and started to pick up the sport, my father signed me up to the courts that I used to go and kind of sneak out to after soccer practice and watch. And I began to train there. I still continued using the aluminum racket. I used to walk to the courts. I mean, it wasn't very close. I have memories of walking maybe an hour, 45 minutes just to get there. And as time passed, I got better. My cousins from Canada came to visit us, and my dad's cousin at the time, the one that helped us arrive in Canada, helped us get to Canada, brought me my first Wilson racket. And it was a Wilson Pro Staff 6.1 Classic. Grip size 1. That thing was a beauty. I was so happy to have it. I was one of the very few kids that had a graphite racket at the time. And I began playing with it. Maybe it made me better. Maybe it didn't. I mean, probably it did, because it felt different. And I just kept going with it and just kept playing. It was much later that I got a second racket. Once my level kind of got better and I understood the game better, my dad requested that we get a second one, and we got another one. I remember that a lot of the tennis training that we did at the club, we would train, we would have our lessons. And after our lessons, we had a small hill on the other side of the tennis courts, at the back of the tennis courts. It was almost like a walking path where couples would just go for walks on it. We used to have to do conditional training. I guess that's what they called it at the time. We had to run, jog, sprint, frog walks, frog jumps, kangaroo hops, all kinds of stuff like that. It was excruciating. I felt like I was going to die when I would have to go and do that stuff. I really didn't like it. I understood that it needed to be done, and I remember from some of the soccer drills that we did that you had to do a lot of footwork, but I really didn't like it. I just felt like I didn't understand why it was necessary at the time.
So tennis in Ontario, I spent a lot of time in Ontario, growing up playing ice hockey, but also I lived in Toronto for 2 years. My kids were playing ice hockey, but I've been back and forth. I spent a lot of time in Quebec and a lot of time in Ontario, but the rest of Canada, no, just those 2 areas. Actually, in Florida, to digress, I don't know if this still exists, but for the longest time, there was more Canadians in Florida than any other province, with the exception of Ontario and Quebec. I would think the population of BC has increased, where maybe that's changed. But what about the cost of tennis? I mean, so you come over as an immigrant, Canada, Toronto is a very expensive city.
Yeah, I I remember that during the Balkan Wars, my father was spending a fair amount of money on tennis training. Um, Soccer was inexpensive. It was a group sport. It was not a lot of private coaching involved in it.
Play in the rain.
Yeah, playing rain or shine, you had to continue going. But when it came to tennis over there, um, I remember some group practices and some group activities, but a lot of it was just private lessons. I remember being in a fair amount of private lessons, and just to kind of put it into perspective, at the time during the war, the Serbian currency was very low. We didn't have it, it wasn't valued very much. So we used to use the German mark, the Deutschmark. That was one of the main currencies that was being traded every day.
That was before the euro.
Yeah, that was before the euro. So at that time, I remember my parents would say that tennis training costed anywhere from 400 to 500 Deutschmarks a month. And then as I got a little bit older, and the euro converted, that was Deutschmark was 2 to 1 to the euro at the time. So to put into perspective, then 250 euros a month was just going on tennis. And during that time, I don't think people were even average family income just for, let's say, just one of the parents. I don't think it was more than 200 euros a month, maybe 300. And that's if both parents worked, it was manageable to get by, but there would be no extracurricular activities. There'd be no tennis, no swimming, nothing that required extra other than what was already built out in the environment. Soccer, there was always soccer fields, there was always basketball courts, there was some volleyball facilities as well. But if you wanted to do swimming, you wanted to do anything to do with skating, anything to do with tennis, anything that they had to build extra, it was very expensive. Once the euro converted, the largest amount of Deutschmarks converted into the euro came from Serbia during that time. I mean, outside of Germany and some of the bigger countries, but in that Eastern Bloc, Serbia held on to the Deutschmark for the longest amount of time, and people kept the money. They did not want to give it away because the currency of the country was just, it was worth nothing.
Then going to Canada, you were very active with tennis. Let me say this again, that in Ontario, tennis is small, but from my point of view, tennis in America is small. It's a minor sport. It's a niche sport. It's really faded away as a public sport. High school tennis is not what it once was, where everybody played. But I know many of the people your age. In fact, I coached a lot of people via the Richmond Hill tennis facility in Richmond Hill. But so you were in tennis and you played, then after school you got into sales. But tell us a little bit about your time from 13 on.
So once we arrived, started going to school, really wanted to find a place where I could play tennis and continue training. My parents wanted me to continue going. We were in a new place. There was tennis facilities around. The situation was safe. So we explored options. But like many other immigrants at the time, you don't come with a whole lot of money. You don't come with lots of money that you can spend or push your child into extracurricular activities. So my parents explored options, private options, like you mentioned, the country club, maybe some of the other bubbles that were around. There was another bubble in another part of the city called Thornhill. They also had a bubble there. But it was just, it wasn't feasible. My parents couldn't afford it. My father came, he worked as a car salesman at a Chevy dealership. He didn't speak a lot of English. He didn't sell a lot of cars. My mom didn't work. German wasn't something that was desirable in Canada at the time. Didn't speak the language, couldn't communicate too well. So I tried out immediately for the high school team. Once I got into high school, right away tried out for the high school team, made the team, and played on the varsity team. We had a varsity team at our school. I was in grade 9. I did not get to play first boys or the main boys singles. I did play on a doubles with another Eastern European fella as well, another Serbian kid that was in my school, and my training didn't take place in an academy or a facility that could better me in a way, that could continue progressing me and improving me as time went on. I tried to play some lower tournaments, some rookie tournaments or maybe 1 star or 2 stars, but I couldn't do well enough.
With Richmond Hill, Thornhill, that area, many players over the years, over the decades, became respectable pro players. I mean, say people who were top 200 in the world. There's quite a few people from the Richmond Hill, Thornhill area. Miran Mann, Richard Hernandez, Jim Rogers. I have to stop and think. We've had a few Canadians on our podcast. Talk about the immigrants. People on the outside of Canada think of Tennis Canada as being really sophisticated or very successful, but I think a lot of it is the hungry immigrant. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, like you said, even though I remember when we arrived and I kind of couldn't get into some of the tennis programs. Some of the kids that were playing, like you said, they were from the former Eastern Bloc, right? There was a lot of them they could have been Romanian, they could have been from other parts of Yugoslavia. Comes to mind Milos Raonic, parents Montenegrin. He was born in Canada, but he was from Thornhill.
Right.
He was another player that was from Thornhill. A couple of years younger than myself. So I remember as he was playing, he's a good player, played in the juniors, had good results. He was trained by some of the pros in that area as well. So
sorry to interrupt, but Casey Curtis was a guest
That's
on our
right.
podcast.
Yeah.
I know a significant amount of time in his formative years. I don't know, take a shot at it from 6 to 16 or in that ballpark. Spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah. So there was a lot of the kids that played. They happened to be from that immigrant side. They were not, they weren't generations and generations Canadian or generations from Canada or from America. They were all from somewhere else in the world. So the competition among immigrants was high. They all wanted to get their kids going and moving. It felt like that the Canadian children didn't participate in tennis.
There's hockey player Joe Sakic.
Yeah.
Croatian, Serbian.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I believe somewhere Croatian.
Yeah. So, but I used to say, because I spent a lot of time, not just the time that I was living in Canada, but at Canadian junior tournaments. And I used to say that you want to hear English. You think, okay, English and French. I've always teased that all Canadians are bilingual. They speak English and profanity. That's because I've met mostly Canadian hockey players. But with tennis was the first choice. That was my impression, that they weren't choosing other sports. They weren't choosing golf. So soccer was built in.
Soccer was built in, but the Canadian soccer scene during those years was not very strong. It was not very big. And even the kids that came that were good at soccer or wanted to play soccer, there just wasn't a place for them on the map.
Well, even to this day in America, I know the women have won the World Cup, I think twice, I'm not sure, but soccer is considered a new sport in America. And it's like in college tennis, where would we be in America if we didn't have this influx of all these college tennis players from all over the world? It brings the level of college tennis up, but also so many foreigners have stayed in the U.S. Where would we be without not only the students who came over to play college tennis, but the students who stayed to work in tennis? But I understand that that is one strength of American soccer, is that we have a big influence from the outside.
Yeah. So when it came to tennis, I mean, it became the only sport that you played. There was no other sports for immigrants. They solely and only focused on that. And my parents were very much focused on that as well. And just the only thing is they couldn't fund it. Some of the programs, like you mentioned at the country club, were not feasible for somebody that arrived, and they didn't come with a lot of money. My dad was an economist. that wasn't something very desirable when he arrived here. My mom, like I said, she was fluent in German. She couldn't get a high enough paying job that could support the tennis for me to go on and play.
Well, for our listeners too, in Canada, it's the Great White North. It's a long winter, and you're talking indoor tennis.
Yeah.
But here, even in the States, it's amazing. People from outside of the U.S. we can't believe how they can see empty tennis courts. There's public parks.
Yeah.
You drive by and courts are not being used.
I read some statistics recently, and this is recently with the tennis development in Canada nowadays, with all the stars that we have. I believe Canada has about 7,500 outdoor tennis courts. Only 10% of those courts are indoor facilities, and they're open all year round. So the numbers are very small. And back then, late 90s, Tennis Canada's involvement in supporting the sport and opening up other facilities and promoting it were very minor, or probably not existent.
Canada has been called a melting pot. Used to be that the Italians, for example, Anthony ended up in New York, and the other Anthony ended up in North York. And Tony is to New York and to North York. And the Tony who went to New York became an American, and eventually the Italian language faded away for the most part. But the Tony who went to North York, if you were to ask the immigrant from Italy that went to North York, what's your nationality? They would say, I'm Italian.
Yeah, that's right.
Where in the United States, for whatever reason, they would say, I'm American.
Yeah.
I think that years ago that was a strength in America, in so many ways. But I think, knock on wood, we need to go back to that. We don't need to have. We don't need to start talking about politics, but America, we can't have the great America be in the rearview mirror. So you were in tennis, but then through school, your passion, you're back in tennis now, but there was a period of time where you're out of tennis. You're working in sales.
Yeah, I as high school continued and I got older, and tennis kind of fell on the back burner. I mostly just began to play recreationally at a local tennis club, just a small tennis club called Richmond Hill Lawn Tennis Club. 6 outdoor courts, no real no tennis program, some adult programs, some leagues, house league, evening play, that sort of stuff. Worked as a tennis court monitor. Always wanted to stay around it and wanted to spend as much time as I could around it. Used to take my bicycle over and just watch people play, even though they were much older than me, and there was no real competitive juniors. I remember volunteering for a bunch of times, or just being there and just not getting paid for anything that I did, just because I just wanted to be around the sport as much as possible. After that, we finished high school and I graduated from Richmond Hill High School. My parents wanted to find some way that I could continue to being in tennis. Humber College is a college in Toronto. They at the time offered a tennis program. I don't think the program's available anymore, but the tennis program was something that would train you to, I believe, be a tennis coach or be involved in tennis. The program was a 2-year diploma, and you would spend a year in the classroom and then another half a year on the court. And then there was a co-op program for the last 6 months. A co-op would be placement. You would go and you would work somewhere. I signed up. I applied for the program. When the program's specialty like that, you need a certain amount of students to sign up in order for the program to be put into place. The program required 24 students. It only had 18 sign up. So it was terminated for that year. So my mom said, we're not going to waste time. You have to continue going to school. You have to stay in that spirit and just continue going. If you take time off, things could change. So I had a secondary choice, golf course management. My mom felt like that was something that could boom at the end of the 90s. and I signed up for it. They required me to have 2 golf course references as, if I worked at a golf course part-time, maybe as a greenskeeper or, like like you would work in the bunkers or pick up balls and whatnot. I did. I had a reference from 1 golf course, but I didn't have a reference from a second one. Couldn't qualify for that program either. And then my third choice was business marketing. I took a business marketing associate's diploma, as you guys call it here, for 2 years. And I finished that, graduated, got the 2-year diploma. And my father said, let's put you to work.
Sales. We'll have to get to many things. You've only been here for a short period of time in your internship. Our listeners are going to be here for 5 weeks and just starting the second week. We just did a weekend workshop and Alex came across the courts with a cup of coffee and I said, hey, go put your coffee down. And before we had the podcast, I looked up, I had seen it before. Andy Fitzell had me look at it a long time ago. He's a movie buff. Alex Baldwin. Listeners, just go to YouTube, put in Alex Baldwin closing speech. And he actually in that scene, he tells one of the sales people that he's addressing, put the coffee down. So I got a kick out of that because we completed the clinic, and I just went back. We talked about sales, and we had 2 young students when we were talking about sales, and they weren't listening. It's just amazing with young people. Put your phone away, and when you're around people that are older than you, listen. Keep track of how many hours you're on the screen. We tell the parents, when your kid gets home, put the phone on the kitchen counter. But so you got into sales. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my father at the time got a little better, got a little more, got his feet on the ground a little bit more. And just like many other, I believe, trades or immigrants at the time, got into small home renovations. He actually started to work in windows and doors. So opened up a business. Well, first he became a salesman for a windows and doors company. And then he opened up his own company and he was doing windows and doors, installation of windows, vinyl doors, front doors, entryways, patio doors, and just overall window installation. He was the only sales guy and he was the only marketing guy and he was the only guy that was going door to door, knocking on doors and or walking through parking lots and sticking flyers into windshield wipers. So when young Alex completed his degree, which my dad funded, he said, it's time to go to work, son. So what we would do is I began working for him. I wasn't so much working in the installation side of things, but whenever he would close a job or we would be in a neighborhood, the installers would be working, I would have a flyer, my dad would print them out, and I would go down the street one way and back down the street the other way, one street north, back and front, one street south, back and front, knocking on doors, offering free estimates, offering free measurements, anything that could give us some business in that neighborhood. And I did that a number of years.
Well, you're a young man. We'll get into the tennis, but the book Range, the generalist is better off than the specialist. And for the listeners, I mean, I think in some ways it's a great opportunity, great privilege. The people who just grow up today and all they do is hit tennis balls. We've said it before in this podcast. Years ago, even affluent kids, when they would turn 16, it was not cool if they didn't have a summer job. And, get your hands dirty. I like to ask, young tennis kids, what part-time jobs have you had? I mean, have you, of course, where you've spent so many years now, shoveling snow, raking leaves, mowing lawns, scraping shutters, but all experiences add up. And all that, especially knocking on doors and, rule number 1 is do just the opposite of what you want to do, break those comfort zones. And I always say this quite often, when a tennis kid gets a job in tennis, it's not a job. Many times a kid, a gregarious, outgoing personality, they hit the ball a little bit. It becomes a blind leading the blind. See it all the time. They're at a tennis club and they're teaching the glorified babysitting classes. And it's tragic. It's you can't point the fingers at the young, 16-year-old. I think in Canada, same as here in the U.S. You turn 16, then you can legally work. Um, but then you got into it went for you weren't working with your father.
Yeah, so learned a little bit about sales, broke out of my comfort zone, started to kind of use some of those skills, work a little bit on the design of some of the flyers, got an understanding a bit of when people were at home, when would be a good time to knock on the doors, come after dinner when the homeowner's there. And business picked up. I mean, it got better. Immigrant family, we all work together, we all eat together, right? One income, everybody helping everybody. It started to take off a bit better, and my mom decided to open up a small Eastern European deli in Richmond Hill. She would work in the deli. My dad would still do the windows and doors. He would spend a certain amount of time helping out in the deli as well, but Alex got his speaking skills better, got more comfortable knocking on doors, getting doors closed right in his face. So put me in the front of the store, get me to work in the store as well. So I used to work in the store. I used to go to the local distributor that would sell the Eastern European foods, pick up stuff from there. I remember also working for my mom. Every Saturday morning, I would go to a Slovenian bakery and I would buy strudels. And then I would go and deliver those strudels and resell them at other delis in the city, in Toronto. And then after that, while I'm there, might as well go hand out some flyers and, knock on some doors in those neighborhoods that could possibly get us some business for my father's business. So it was a full-time job. I mean, there was nothing else that I was doing. I did want to get back into tennis, and I kind of took it upon myself to sort of get back into it. But because I've been out of the game already at that point, and now this is maybe 04, 05, my tennis level has decreased. I'm already now in my 20s, right? So I decided to get instructors. I went to Tennis Canada. I applied for the tennis instructors course. And in 2004, I became a Tennis Canada certified instructor.
Which is almost, knock on wood, a couple of days from now, it'll be 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. So got the instructors, a weekend course. I don't even know, maybe $150, something along those lines. And, they don't teach you a whole lot in regards to that. They talk to you about the sport, the court, the rules of the court. You get a nice handbook of, the scoring system, how things are played, how doubles are played. And you are put in a private lesson, a little private lesson exam at the end of the course, at the end of the weekend. So got that, super happy, ready to go. I'm ready to go into tennis now. I got my dad's stuff going. That's working. My dad's getting stuff going. My mom's deli's on its feet. All right, let's get back into tennis. Start looking for tennis jobs. And not a lot of jobs. Still tennis not very big. Not a lot of talent getting produced. And my mom finds a job. When you say Great White North, well, this was north. This was up in the Yukon. And she said, look, you can do this. They're paying $22 an hour, early 2000s. They're paying for your stay. You go there. They give you the teaching. They give you the place to live. You're only there during a certain amount of months, right? Because even
summer, yeah.
Yeah, summer. The planes don't even go out in that direction in the wintertime. Young Alex in his 20s, started driving, had my own car. I wanted to live life. I wanted to live the tennis life in Toronto. I didn't want to go live a tennis life in the Yukon. I'd have no friends. I wouldn't know what to do up there. And I debated, we discussed it, but I chose not to go up. And sometimes to this day, I think I should have gone. I should have spent some time going up there and just seeing what that's all about. It would have been a great experience. But
Tony Robbins. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have done this. I should have done that. And in the end, I shit all over myself. With Toronto, my oldest brother he wasn't the GM in title. He was the associate GM under Ken Dryden. And the American Hockey League team played, I think, at St. John's. Is that right? And they now play in Toronto, but when he was in charge, he economically it was better to have the team be in Toronto. They sell it every night, and people can't get tickets to the Leafs games. So expensive and so popular. The term "down on the farm," to keep them down on the farm, so they're hungry. So was it Newfoundland, Nova Scotia? My geography, they want to get to Toronto, but it would have been interesting. All my days, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's taught tennis in the Yukon.
It would have been an experience.
Yeah. So you were in sales full time with another company. Talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about sales.
So
everybody should go through training on sales.
Yeah. So a year or two goes by, and one of my cousin's friends says, "Look, you got this degree. You're working with your old man. See if you can make a little more money. I got a guy. He's in IT. They're doing computer sales." I said, "Okay, computer sales. 05, 06. Sure. What do I got to lose? What are they selling?" And at the time, I heard about the Dells, the Hewlett Packards, the Toshibas, the Sonys. A lot of brand names are coming up in the computer market to say, yeah, they're selling Dells, they're selling Hewlett Packards. Why don't you give it a shot? I head out, go to the interview, and they hire me as a sales rep at a refurbished computer company. So they're buying computers from Fortune 500 companies. They're refurbishing them, and they're selling them into U.S. education. Everything's done over the phone. We're using emails. We're using mass emails. We're making dials every day. We got calling hour. We're pounding the phones. And I start. Small team. My boss is a Greek guy, big into soccer, likes Serbians, has a number of Serbian friends. My cousins are mostly Serbians, so the husbands were also Serbians as well. So says, yeah, bring Alex on board. Bring him on. 5 guys on the team, including my boss, 1 Bulgarian guy, 1 French guy, myself, and another black guy. So we start going. They gave us the books, directories of all the school districts in each state. You pick a state and you start pounding the phones. You got the superintendent's names. You got the principal's names of each school. No script. Just call them up. Schedule some time on the phone, and let's see what they're using over there. So, not a lot of phone sales experience. I understand how things work when you face-to-face, body language, how people react to the things that you say, how you look, what you're wearing. But on the phone, nobody can see that. They can only hear the voice. So not a lot of training at first, but as my boss got a little bit better and stronger and some of his territories began producing, he started investing more time into the team. We started going through sales training. We started watching sales movies. We started having sales trainers come and teach us how to go about selling over the phone. Most of the people that we are calling, superintendents, they're people that are in charge of a whole lot of other folks under them, like principals, technology managers, technology coordinators, business managers, accounting managers. These are all titles that have access to government funds that can buy infrastructure and technology for their schools. So we started just calling everybody and anybody that would hear our speech and listen to our pitch.
You certainly got used to rejection.
Yeah. Lots of times I would get rejected, but it didn't stop me. I mean,
how did you say it the other day? The sale is closed one way or the other.
Yeah. On every phone call.
For you, the salesperson, or for the person shutting it down on the other end.
That's right. Yeah.
Boy, has it really changed. Now, one's phone rings, and if the person calling is not in your telephone, I think most people just wait and I'll take the text first.
Mm-hmm.
because it could be a cold call, it could be a marketing call. Actually, for our listeners, if you answer a telephone, you don't know who's on the other end, don't say anything. And if it's dead silence, just hang up, because you know it's a marketing call, because it's automated. If you say hello right away, boom, that's just enough to click the machine, and then you hear the automated spiel. I remember being told that telemarketing, people don't hear the first 4 syllables. We used to train, way back when, tennis tech program we had for tennis teachers, used to train people on the phone. I'd have people in my office, and I would listen to their telephone skills. Dennis Vandermeer, the great late Dennis Vandermeer, if you worked for him, you had to call 5 new people a day. And now people don't take phone calls. But if you wanted to have something happen, if there was a tennis club, tennis program, you have a standing event. But if it's a special event, standing event means it's just on the schedule. It's permanent. It happens every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday. But you're having a special program, you call people up, and that human connection is so much better than a text. I think that's just gone away. I think another thing that's gone away is we're going to have free clinics. We're going to call people up. We're going to get people out. We're going to get new people playing the game. And I think back in the day, the U.S. was known for such a strong middle class. I think, like so many other countries, we're coming closer to haves and have-nots. And many tennis pros they're just catering to a small group of people. And it's not, I don't like the word client, especially in junior tennis, but it's not as if they have new business.
That's right.
And it's a really sad state of affairs that tennis coaches in the local scene, they're fighting over people who can already play, like in the junior market. They're out at the junior tournaments handing out business cards, and let's get new blood. Let's get new people in the game. Let's teach beginners. We'll get around to tennis teaching, but I think it'd be great if they had tournaments, tennis teaching tournaments. We're going to go to elementary school. We're going to spread people out on a parking lot, on athletic fields, and ideas from ideas. In former Czechoslovakia, I've got a couple books on Czech tennis, and I went there once to study tennis in '87. But we get kids out on an athletic field. Cut off the ping pong paddles, tape 2 paddles to their hand, and just they were looking for talent. They're going to, who can we find from this group? That was a Soviet system, not to cater to the wealthy, but to cater to the talented. From a sales standpoint, you'll hear people say, "Well, engineers don't make very good salespeople," but actually they do. If someone who really knows their product. And that's what's amazing about tennis. You go to sporting goods stores, and some young lad, should say a guy or a gal, and they're teaching or they're selling sporting good equipment. And basically that's 2% product knowledge and 98% people skills. But there's so many scenes. When you told me, I said, yeah, I've seen that. Alec Baldwin is for closers.
Coffees for closers.
Coffees for closers. Yeah, look that up, listeners. And then with that, you can go down the rabbit hole, and there's movie scenes, like the top 5 movie scenes on teaching salesmanship. And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty high up there.
So you did that for a long time, and then now you're into tennis. You're doing tennis full time now.
Yes, I did sales. Worked at that IT company for a number of years. The team grew, the territories got split up. A lot more sales reps came on board. Company ended up having over 400 employees. The recertification was all done in-house. All the computers were brought up and then recertified there, and then shipped back out into the US. A few of my friends, got jobs there as well, and then shifted a little bit away from the hardware, moved into software. It was sort of the same pitch, but just for a different product, more of a service. Software nowadays tends to be more, you buy the software and then you have a subscription, and then you go about selling subscriptions and packages and add-ons to the software that you're selling. So I did that for the last 2 years of my sales career, let's call it. And then in 2016, I said, it's enough. You know, I've taken rejections. I've made money. I've made the calls. I know what I can do. I know what I want to do. And I stopped it and said, I got to do what I'm passionate about. I got to do something that's going to make me smile every morning when I go to work. You know, don't get me wrong. Sales is a great income. You can make lots of money. But my boss used to tell me, Alex, never forget this. You're only as good as your month's numbers. You go out 3 months in a row not making any money. It's not personal. It's business. I got to let you go. As I got older and as I got wiser, I did not want to have to think about that. It's just not something that you want to have as you get closer to your mid 30s, early 40s. So 2016 came around 7 years ago. I'm 33 and I'm saying it's time for a change. We got to get back to the Great White Yukon. We got to go explore that option one more time. So I go through the Canada training program. I sign up with Tennis Canada one more time and I go into the next step up. 12 years later, I'm back in the scene. I'm ready to do from instructor to go.
What was that second course like?
That second course is Club Pro 1. It was spaced over 3 months, 1 week at each month for the 2 days. And the course would test you on some basic coaching skills. There was 4 elements to the course. There was a feeding component. There was a private lesson component. There was a breaking down a playing situation component, and there was a component of training pattern of shots. You would get tested on those 4 things.
Who was the instructor?
At the time, we had Andy Sutton. He's a Tennis Canada course facilitator. There was, I'm trying to think of her name, lady by the name of Jean, another gentleman by the name of Craig Mercer. There was another guy from Niagara Falls or St. Catharines area, Scott something. They were the course facilitators, and they would help you out throughout the course, and they would kind of guide you through the steps that you needed to require, you know, to pass the course. Pass the course, you know, get a little cardboard piece of paper, your name on there, Club Pro 1. Hoorah, I'm ready to go. Okay.
Did you feel it prepared you?
I felt that it allowed me now to apply for the jobs inside of clubs. During that time, I always felt that my instructors was just enough for me to maybe give some private lessons, or maybe for me to kind of hang around some of the public courts and see if I can get a lesson or two. When I got the instructors, and then as I kind of got a little bit better in sales, I always wanted to go by the courts and, you know, make a little poster, a little plaque, zip tie it to the fence, put my number on there, you know, just see if I can get some business like that. And I did get business. And, you know, I gave some lessons here and there, but that business would go away once the winter would come because I had nowhere to take those students to continue teaching them. I also wasn't, you know, very good technically in terms of teaching. I felt that the Club Pro 1 course didn't give me enough knowledge when it came to technique and how to actually make my students perform the moves and how to make them better. And I was ready after the course to explore options working in a club, thinking that I would work under somebody like a head pro that would then teach me more, that would talk to me about how to actually do the job better.
You know, in the United States, especially in the southern parts of the United States, the weather, tennis is more year-round outdoors. You know, the land of the car trunk pro. I'm not sure what the numbers are now, but a safe bet would be well over 50% of the people teaching tennis are not certified. They're not a member of the USPTR, PTA. And if they are certified, it's because they need the insurance. You know, they're not really doing it for the skill set that they're taught by either organization, which is sad. I tell people, if you're going to be in tennis in this country, you should become a member of both the PTR and the USPTA, because if you want to have a voice, you know, you have to be an insider. I don't think that you can be critical of the PTR or the USPTA unless you're a member of in this country, the PTR or USPTA. I mean, how would you know? But also too, that if people go through the organizations and network and seek people out, I think that, the education is not through conferences. To go listen to somebody speak for an hour. If you could go and be mentored under someone who has a solid track record in certain parts of the tennis industry. So again, coming back to the internship. So now, did you go through any other levels? How many? There's 5 levels, right? Or there's 4. Canada.
There's some sub levels within a level. So I believe that after Club Pro 1, there's a Club Pro 2. So, and then they would take you into, you can either continue being a Club Pro or you can become a coach, where you take your coach 1, your coach 2, your coach 3. Club Pro keeps you more along the side of being in the clubhouse, administrative, clinics, programs, organization, that sort of stuff.
And you can rent courts.
Yeah. But the coaching pathway is a separate pathway after the first 2 Club Pros. I didn't explore those options. It wasn't something that I found was going to help me with my technical knowledge and my technical base. And I'm a strong believer that with great technique, a great game will develop. So I didn't explore them at the time. I just started to apply for tennis jobs. And I looked up as many tennis facilities in Ontario as I could possibly find. I used things like LinkedIn. I used Facebook. I used the Ontario Tennis Association website. I used Tennis Canada as a resource, all the clubs listed within my province. And I emailed every single tennis pro that I could find. I sent them in LinkedIn message. I emailed them. I messaged them over Facebook. Some of those sales skills came in very handy, and my persistence of not giving up to continue emailing and calling and trying to get a hold of them.
How'd that go as far as replies?
4 of them responded back.
4 out of, gives a ballpark. 4 out of.
I would say maybe something along the lines of 75 to 100, let's say, that were in my Toronto area. 4 responded back. 2 interviewed me. Both of the 2 that interviewed me gave me an offer. One was in Toronto, in the city, an area where I live now, and another one was outside of Toronto in Burlington. One was working in a facility that was winter only, and another one that would be a facility that has a dome, a bubble that they put up over their summer courts. The Burlington opportunity sounded great. A young head pro was looking for some coaches. She was willing to offer me some fitness programs as well, things like cardio tennis, other fitness training, aerobic training as well for tennis. But when I think of the Canadian winters and I think of driving in some severe weather, having to have to be out in the bubble at 7 a.m. Remember, I'm living in Richmond Hill at the time, driving to Burlington in a snowstorm, you're looking at least an hour commute. And that's if you don't get stuck or if the roads are not closed. I turned that down and I went with the option that was closer to me, that was closer to the city.
I've been to Burlington. There was an ITF in Burlington years ago. Actually, I've been all over Ontario, more through hockey, but with. So then, who told you to look us up?
So how that all went about, got the job in the bubble, started working in the bubble. In the area that was in, the guy hired pros from the area, from other summer clubs to work inside of the bubble. An opportunity in the bubble came, got a job at a summer club, and then COVID happened. Summer clubs got closed, locks got put on gates, and we were not allowed to give lessons. Like I said, money became an issue. I no longer had a sales job. I wasn't doing anything along sales lines. And I began to sell some of the equipment that I had, things that I would buy for a discounted price, and then I would try to flip it for more money. Rackets, shoes, hoppers, balls, anything that was related to tennis that I could get my hands on that I knew there was value in. sources like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, very popular website in Ontario in terms of private sales. And like I said, Ben Falkenstein came across. I met him at his court, went in there, and it was like I was in heaven. I was like, what is this place? He bought some balls for me. He bought a couple pairs of shoes, called me back a week later, said, still looking for some more equipment. I said, could I rent a court from you? And he said, oh, no. We don't, we're closed. We don't give court time to just anybody. And I said, well, again, persistence from sales. I said, well, look, maybe we can work something out. I can give you some more equipment. I got some other stuff that I'm looking to liquidate. Started teaching there, gave me some court time. And the facility had an office inside of it. He used to watch me through the windows. I would be teaching, kept giving me more hours, different times of day that I could teach.
And he was the one who was picky.
He was the one that was picky. Everything was provided there. We had balls there, ball machines, ball tubes, an area for fitness. And he would come out after and he would say, boy, for someone so persistent to work, you don't have a clue what you're doing.
But it's interesting though, that from war-torn Serbia to coming to Canada as an immigrant. So you're served through the pandemic and starting a new career, leaving sales and being tennis. Hungry dog hunts best. So you had those skills to pick yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, he saw I'm bringing in juniors, I'm bringing in young adults, I'm bringing in groups,
and you weren't going to call home. In other words, call home for money. I pride myself on the fact that I withdrew from school. I later went back. It was not like I did get a degree, but I was not really of any significance from a learning standpoint. But when I withdrew from school, and I'm not a hardship case kid, but never called home for a penny. Just never going to call home with, that's just those type of things. I mean, today, it's just amazing. I don't think there's enough appreciation taught the kids with their parents. The boomerang kid, the boomerang, you throw it, it comes back. The boomerang kid, they come back. They're in all fairness, I mean, the economy and such, but it's just amazing how many young people go back and live at home, and the rent's pretty cheap. Back in the day in America, there were so many kids when they were 18 years old, they were just told, okay, you're on your own. You pay for college on your own. So how's it go? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, that's right.
So then the pandemic comes to an end, and
yeah, so he tells me, your students got to start petting some dogs. I said, what does that mean? He goes, look up Rick Macy. Look at his technique. Look what he's talking about. So I go on YouTube, start looking up some videos. I see some old footage. Again, this is all before the movie came out about the Williams sisters. And there's Rick there, and he's doing the loop. And he says, you got to wave, and you got to pet the dog in the back. You got to come up here, and you got to slap it here on the side. You got to come up, finish high. So I said, okay, this works. I stick with this. Started digging, started looking. But there wasn't a whole lot of information on what the drills were, how to do them, what would make my students better in those. So I said, how can I make myself better? America's a big place. They got lots of tennis going on there. There's got to be somebody there that's either selling content or selling teaching. There's got to be somebody. So I began looking, began researching, and I came across the Total Tennis University course that's offered at Vandermeer in Hilton Head. So there I am. I'm ready to go to Hilton Head. I'm with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. And I say, look, we got to go do this. I got to take this course. This is going to change it. It's going to change everything that I'm doing so far. We're going to go down there. I'm going to spend a week. I'm going to shadow some world-class coaches, and I'm going to get better at the teaching. So we pack up. We go to Vandermeer. We get down there. We get an Airbnb. And, I start attending the course. They have some people that are coming for the course, but then they had a handful of student coaches. They were like interns in a sense from Latin America. There was a few of them that were from Latin America, Bolivia, Ecuador, and they were coaches there. They were coaches at Vandermeer. They were living at Vandermeer. They were teaching every single day, and then they were there for the summer, and then they would go somewhere else. So I went there. I was there for the whole week. Maybe second or third day in, they brought in a Dunlop rep. And he started telling us a little bit about his story, how long he's been with Dunlop, where he came from, how he was connected to the southeast area of the US. So I'm listening to him, finishes his talk, and I approach him at the end of his presentation. I said, look, maybe you could help me out a little bit. I like the course and I'm learning, but the course is not really focused a lot on technical stuff. A lot of the Vandermeer drills are good, instant tennis, some of the way that the lessons are put together, the PTRs over there. And, I would like to get a little bit more better with the technique. And he said, there's somebody. I've come across somebody. And I said, yeah, where are they? And he says, they're in southeast US in Florida. And I said, okay, could you share, the information with me? He goes, they're very serious about technique. And I said, okay, I think I'm ready for it. He goes, no, they're very serious. And I said, all right, well, I'll take my chances. Just let me know who it is. And he said, look up Steve Smith, GreatBase. So I said, okay. Looked it up, saw some videos, saw some footage, got kind of a little bit more familiar with your Instagram, your podcasts. And then at the time I reached out on Instagram to GreatBase, and Andy was with you. And he said, best place to start is get the Vic Braden Tennis for the Future book. See if you can source that book, learn that book, read it inside out. And that'll be a very good place for you to start your technical teaching and to go how go about to actually teach people. So I did that.
No, it's interesting. Dennis Vandermeer, I remember it was 1976. I went through the tennis university. Prior to that, I had gone to the weekend program he had. A matter of logistics, timing, money. So I remember it was a 10-day program, and it was $450. And yeah, so I went through that and became a certified pro with, I have to think actually, maybe it was 78 where I actually took the test, where I went through it a second time, because it was a matter of fees. But at the first time I went through it, I was a tennis bum. I'm living in a van playing tournaments, and I wasn't really so interested in the certification. I was just interested in the education. And then I actually hosted that program for nearly a decade, where Dennis would come out, and I'd be curious what the program's like now without Dennis. Dennis was just amazing with the progressions and group dynamics and corrective measures. And it's interesting, serious. That's an interesting word. That detailed, like they're going to get down to the finer points, but it is a critical study. I mean, it's one definition of philosophy. It's a critical study. How deep a dive have people gone into technique? Everything just circles back. It's like we could circle back to salesmanship, and nowadays in this country, and I've taught tennis in over 30 countries. I mean, it's so great. I mean, yeah, I've traveled that much, but I can't tell you how many people I've taught from how many countries. It's a big number, but just communication skills. But juniors don't address, someone is okay, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Brown, Dr. Johnson. They don't even really greet adults.
They don't.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's like, where did that stop? And in some countries, like young German kid comes into a room, he's going to walk around and shake everybody's hand. Maybe that's gone away too. I spent so many years in Germany, but greet people. adult walks in the room, you stand up, and it's Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. You ask them how they're doing. And if someone asks a junior today, how are you doing? And they'll go, fine. They don't even say, fine, thanks, how are you? I mean, slap the kid across the head. But it's really we parents. We parents was like, whoa. So you've been here for 8 days. 8 days. We certainly know a lot of the same people in Toronto. Mario Cosentino. Because if you know him, if you watch him hit a tennis ball, brain memory. I haven't seen, there's Frank and Vita Cosentino. I haven't talked to them in years now. Time goes by so fast. How's it go again? Days are long, decades are short.
Yeah.
I remember Frank Cosentino brought his 2 boys, David and
Mario.
Mario and David. And he brought his brother. And I was working at a tennis facility that had a golf course. And I just had a stack of cards and said, no, you can play golf any day you want to play golf, just let me know. And I'll just give you one of these cards. And, they looked at me like it was liquid gold. I mean, are you kidding me? But tell us about your experiences being here. Let me precede that with one of our students, Juan Sebastian Marinque, or is it Juan Marinque Sebastian? Great guy. One was his brother, Alfie. One time he was telling me, he goes, no, you need to get new ideas. You need to get new blood on the podcast. And I said, no. I said, we just need to keep reinforcing the message. There's 10 commandments. We're not looking for 11. People don't understand the 10 commandments. And just to reinforce the message. And we have had, I think as young as a 15-year-old guest, we've had a wide assortment of guests. Podcasts that I listen to periodically, Control the Controllables. Daniel Kiernan is a very clever idea. At the end of the podcast, he asked a famous person, and he just on his 200th podcast, he had Andy Murray. Mm-hmm. And Andy Murray was asked to pass the baton. And he said, Medvedev would be a great person to interview. And that would be a podcast I'd want to listen to. The listeners need to listen to Medvedev on interviews. My volley is so bad. It's awful, but it's getting better. Medvedev, I'm terrible on clay, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to compete. I'm getting better. I won the Italian Open. I'm not that bad. I mean, he is like the best interview. Not the courtside interview. You can really, a lengthy interview where they're asked a series of questions. So you came in. What we do with our listeners, you're here for 5 weeks, and hats off to you for that. To come in and pay fees, it's not as astronomical, but to be here and not be working. We tell people that we customize an internship. How can people make the time? The people that we've coached that have had the most success with developing players, it may sound egotistical, but they keep coming back to the well. You have to come back. And it's not like, my name third person are coming back to see me, but a gal from Bolivia, Carla Navarro, she's married to a Polish guy, Robert Wojciech. She has said many times no 2 days are the same. No 2 days are the same. It's not, people will tell us, people will say that we're a cookie cutter. We do have our critics, but no 2 days are the same. Let's just go through being filmed. Also, tell the listeners what your thoughts on. You came in, we put you through the same assessment: skill testing, hitting the targets, recording that, playing points, running, throwing. If it was an adult player, we just film strokes, and then also to, someone's elderly, they're not playing anymore. I mean, it's not like, okay, we have to go through your running and your throwing skills, your playing skills. We don't have to do that, but we have to film you hitting balls because you are going to demonstrate.
That's right.
Communication, the visual side, it's 70% visual, the learning side. But go ahead, tell us a little bit about your initial impressions on being here.
Well, came in, at first I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure if I would just be taking notes, if I would just be shadowing you, if there would be somebody else I would be, walking behind and kind of listening to what they're doing and saying. But you know, once I made the drive down from Toronto, long drive, I arrive, I come into the courts, kids are playing, kids are being assessed, analyzed, you know, they're being videotaped. And I'm putting two and two together. A guy from Hilton Head telling me it's serious. You know, oh, okay, it looks pretty serious. My impression is like, this is something that, you know, this is where I just gonna be quiet and I'm just gonna go and just absorb everything like a dry sponge. And you know, I did. I observed. I watched. I wasn't sure if I was going to be videotaped. I didn't think that was going to be something that I'd have to do because I'm coming here. I've been playing for 30 years. I'm a good player. I can hit with former pros. A lot of my students look up to me. I get videotaped. And then I go from here to down here. And, you know, I look at the video, I speak with you, you give me your insight, you give me your 2 cents, and I have to turn on that learning brain again. You know, I have to put myself in the position of my students and intake the information and have to reenact it in my own way. Now, it can be it can be tough because I've played a certain way for so long that I'm automatically programmed to react a certain way in a particular situation. And now I'm here and somebody's telling me, hey, you got to do it a different way. What you've been doing, it's mediocre. It's not that good. It's not as good as I thought. So a little bit intimidating at first. Master teacher, someone that's analyzed video, someone that's worked with pros. And also I feel privileged because I am given an opportunity that many don't get, whether they don't want it or they can't get it or they don't know how to go about it. I'm given the opportunity to be around somebody that knows so much about the sport and knows what it takes to create a champion. So a little bit scared, a little bit intimidated at first, you know, just a little bit surprised about how my video looked and seeing myself being criticized by somebody else other than just like myself or another former player or maybe somebody that doesn't know as much about the technique. But, you know, people are people. We're all human. We all have a different side to ourselves. And I get to see that side as well. It's not all just, you know, technique and Steve's like this and Steve's like that. And he's going to make you this way or that way. You know, everybody's got a soft human side. So seeing that a lot more as I'm spending my time here, and you know, don't have the fear anymore. The first couple of days, I was a little bit scared, a little bit unsure of how things would go. But as the last couple of days have gone by, and you know, we did a large clinic, and we had lots of people come in. I'm feeling a lot better, a lot easier about it.
No, that's good. With the video, we document video. I mean, you'll get a copy of the video if you haven't got it already, and you watch it 3 times, and you first time straight through, second time stop and start to take notes, third time write down logical sequential order, adjustments you need to make. And the fact that you're a teacher, you're a coach, professional, charging fees, it's not about your game. It's the game. And, you know, then certainly someone has certainly the freedom, the wherewithal to say, well, I'm going to continue to play with this grip or whatever, but I'm going to be aware of what's most efficient. There's not a right or wrong way, but what's most efficient. And people have heard me say this forever: economy, motion, least amount of moving parts, least amount of muscle recruitment. Making the videos, I mean, helps someone with their analytical eye, helps them with their speaking skills, helps them with rainy day occupational skills. Is labor intensive. It's labor intensive. And what we recommend is, unless someone's a complete beginner, is always film them first. Film them first. And a lot of people are, you know, club ladies, you know, to pick on the club gentlemen, they don't take lessons. They go to the beer drinking, slap you on the back workout, and just don't slow me down. Just let me hit the ball. But yeah, I think Vic Braden, if you expect your students to play, you should expect yourself to play. And when I first make videos, even for goal-oriented juniors, initially just think about the game. Because there's 3 reasons you want to work off a film: is prevention of injury, improve your own game, but then also you have to be able to look on the other side of the net and determine what are the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent, or doubles your opponent's technique. So when you first got here, there was a family here from, I'd have to stop and think, at one point we had 8 people from 7 states, and we are just getting started here. We don't advertise, people find us. And, a young player, comes in and, what's his UTR, what's his beep time on the beep test, what's his time on the mile. It depends on how long someone's here, but you really make a study, and it's not to beat someone up, but the parents are blindly writing checks. I get in so much trouble by making a video. So then they go home and it's incriminating, say, well, they've been going someplace for 4 years and taking lessons, and they have major holes in their game. But we also have, you just had to read it. You didn't have to fill it out, but we have a junior goal sheet. And the younger players, certainly we would like to have them sit down with an instructor to fill it out. If they're really young, okay, they can fill it out with their parent. But for the most part, we want them to fill it out on their own. And there's some checkoffs, is tennis your favorite sport? What do you need more of? Do you need more instruction, match play, or drills? It's very interesting to see what they put down. And very seldom, instruction is usually the last thing they think they need. And, we put them through where they just have 25 shots fed to them, and, they only hit 10 targets, so they're at 40%. So if it was academia, and you're telling someone, well, your child's in the 9th grade, but they got a 3rd grade reading level, the person feeding is not making any mistakes. Then we have the tiebreaker test 1, 2, and 3. Tiebreaker test 1, you're feeding a courtesy ball 30 miles an hour. It's predictable. Here comes a forehand. I mean, here comes a forehand volley, and can you hit the forehand volley in the service box? Right. I always credit Andy Fitzell as the drill. Actually, when you start really developing players, just have them hit up the line, so they end up have better technique on their volley. But we have them go cross court, and where that drill came from, it was in the 70s. All American Sports was teaching at Deerfield Academy, Deerfield, Mass, and I felt like an auctioneer. Cross-court forehand, a cross-court backhand, a downline approach shot, cross-court volley, now an overhead. And you just, there's like a beautiful clay court facility back in the day. It's like 20 courts, tennis boom, James Van Allen, the tiebreaker. Everybody was playing tennis. Camps are 150 plus, and, here they come again. And I'm just going, there's got to be a better way. This program we ran where you get a college degree, we used to take that tiebreaker test and do it every day if it was 3 hours a day. We did it 15 hours. We'd take 1 week and just do that drill 15 hours. Wow. And we'd take, like Jim Lair, how to wait in line. Rack it up, feet moving, looking straight ahead, not talking to anybody. With marking it with the quadrants numbered, and then the red zone, yellow zone, green zone, and path of the racket up the percentage line. Basically that time between 81, 91, a 10-year period, it was really a lab setting. It was taking our 8 pillars, and there's really many other coaches, but it really became application. So, it's great that you went to the PTR. It's great that you've been seeking out information. I think I would be fair to say it's too bad for everyone who goes to the PTR, is that there's no more Vandermeer. Or years ago, the USPTA, like a George Basho, just on teaching aids alone, George Basho would come out on the court and he would have 2 baskets, 1 basket just with teaching aids. Just motivated, dedicated, inspired to just make people better. No, and I think during this mass clinic, I should say mass clinic. Did you say mass clinic? Where the large clinic?
Large clinic?
It wasn't a mass clinic. A mass clinic back in the day is like, whoa. I certainly have some nicknames. Andy Fitzel will call me Rambo because he's watched me with my whistle. Well, here's 100 people, and here we go. It's not a problem. But no, Jim Klein. He's been a guest on our podcast. You got a chance to meet Jim, a number of his pros.
Yeah.
I think collectively we were 35 people. Wintergreen Resort, Wintergreen, Virginia. Jim Klein is a great story. He went through tennis tech and he was working in Pittsburgh. And Vic Braden called me up and said, hey, do you have anybody who can help me for a weekend in Philadelphia? And I go, yeah, I got just a guy. I called Jim Klein. He goes, and he told a little bit about the story. Right. He shows up, and Vic goes, okay, you'll be in charge of video, and I'll be in charge of the court. I did it so many times with Vic traveling clinics where I would be in charge of the video, and then he would be in charge of the courts, just be the two of us. And but then as he got older, it flipped around where he just stayed in the video room, then I would be on the courts. I one time was with Vic in Naples, to digress, and I knew the coaches at this facility in Naples were very negative towards Braden. But there was the Jimmy Connors, Nuveen Tour, the senior players. I mean, Borg, and I don't know if Mackin was there at that time, but a lot of big time players. And I was spending a week with Vic, and he's doing some TV, and we're doing some clinics, and so I told Vic, I said, Vic, why don't you just do this? Give your spiel and just say, now we're going to have a Q&A. Those people who would like to stay and ask me questions can stay inside. And those people who want to hit some balls, they can go outside with whoever the tennis director was. Because there was one time where Vic was, he traveled to a certain place and he just asked people their backgrounds. He was meeting with a group of pros, and there's a young guy who was, like 6 or 8 pros, and asked him about the background. And this guy who was like, so there's the head pro and the director and the young guy, Nick DeVoe, said, he said, well, I went to this 2-year school in Texas and I met you before. And then Vic looked right at him and said, okay, you'll be in charge of the video. Because he just knew. He just knew that he would be well trained. Right. He would be well trained. So anyway, Jim Klein, he goes to help Vic. Ed Mullaney offers to pay him. He goes, no, you don't need to pay me a penny. And Ed said it basically to himself, and then to Jim, I goes, I got to get this guy to work for me. And he did. And then all these years later, Jim is now, he has one partner, I believe. He owns a tennis club. Right. So volunteer. You don't have, that's the thing where you got to work for love of the game. You just can't be, I think people need to find a way to give back instead of be a taker. Let's talk a little bit about the weekend of your 8 days here. Let's talk a little bit about the clinic with Jim Klein.
Yeah, I mean, we had a mix of juniors, different ages, different skill levels, lots of boys.
Plus adults.
Yes. We had some participating adults, a couple parents from some of the juniors, and then a couple just on their own.
I would go, Alka, what an inspiring speech she gave at the end of it. It's fantastic to meet her and be around her, is that she volunteered and said, hey, I'm 62.
Yeah.
So Lillian was 11. So we have between 11 and 62. Anyway, it may have been someone older than 62, but I don't think there's anyone younger than 11.
Yeah, Alka's search. When I listened to her speak, and when I watched her facial expressions, it moved me. I could relate to her. She was on that search. She was searching for something that would make her feel like she wanted to find somebody that she could connect her game to. And I feel the same way. I needed to find somebody that I could connect my game, my teaching, my motivation, my energy towards, and her speech moved me, and I could see how the room really listened to her and gave her that respect and kind of connected with her, even though that she was just an adult player, just like any 3 old lady that just takes group lessons. But
Yeah,
she was more than that.
for the listeners, I didn't really put it together until she told the story. Then I remembered, yes, okay. You get a lot of emails, and she was persistent. And I said, well, periodically I do, adult programs, and we, for years and years, we tell people, yeah, you can come. We'll make it work. We just tell the adults you could train like a junior.
Right.
For me, adult tennis is not really a different animal. Now, do you want to get better?
Right.
And, certainly like during the weekend workshop, whatever we would label it, immersion camp, and they were here 48 hours basically.
Right.
But we practiced Saturday at 6 a.m. and Sunday at 6 a.m. and let's go to town.
Marathon day on Saturday.
Yeah. So, after dinner, we came back on the court till 9 p.m. So, and that's the Peter Burwash thing, plug in your personality, the personality coach. Can you make it work? But there's been times where, right now I can't put it together with an adult, whether you're traveling to tournaments and this and that. And, but so I know I hooked her up with Jim Klein, but she said she's seen every video.
Yeah. And listened to every podcast.
Yeah. That's, and she's working but she's a winner. And, I told so many juniors over the years, and not to make them feel bad, not to be doom and gloom, but honesty comes across as, negative, is I'd rather coach the parents. And I think grandparents need to do a better job telling their grandchildren what it was like in the old days.
Yeah.
It used to be that, American society wasn't so mobile. In Canada, because of the weather, people don't go to the Yukon to live. So most of the Canadians live right by the U.S. border.
Right. And
most Canadian kids are around their grandparents, much more than American kids. It's like Coco Gauff. I mean, it's from reading that, she has 2 homeschool teachers, both her grandmother 1, grandmother 2, on both sides. Fortunately, both her grandmothers are living, and, there's a lot of wisdom if you're being taught by your grandmothers.
Yeah.
What else about the workshop, if you were to think of sharing some ideas with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we had 3 courts, but yet we had space for everybody. We had stations where everybody could work on a specifically given task or a particular move that they had to work on. Everything from shuffling around cones to using the 3-ball sock, serve drill, to skipping rope, hitting off the GreatBase backboards. Let me think what else.
I think you go to the beginning, you go to the names. Have to know everybody's name within the first few minutes. Also, too, is we had 7, everybody had, we usually film 3 angles, but we filmed each player 7 basic strokes. Younger players, we'd like to film the backhand volley, so it's 8 strokes, 2-handed backhand volley, 1-handed backhand volley. Everybody was filmed.
Yeah.
We did very fast, brevity, clarity. We went when we had lunch, or I should say breakfast, the 2 days after breakfast, we got into a classroom session, and boom, we're going through video and put another one up. Right away in the beginning to, I mentioned it earlier, the Welby Van Horn balance method.
Right.
But the command to know their names, and you're getting them filmed, or right away when I, rattle off everybody's name, one young guy, Leem, there's 2 Leems. He told me I mispronounced his name. I think of last week or 2 weeks ago, talking to Raven Clausen, it's Leon Smith, who's in charge of the British Davis Cup team, and he's like, there's Jamie and Judy Murray, or Jamie and Andy Murray. Mm-hmm. Heard Judy Murray speak so many times. But Leon Smith is like the oldest son. He's the brother of the brothers, So yeah, names. So this young guy, right in the very beginning, he corrects me. I said, I'll come right back to you. So I go rattle off everybody's name. And before I even said, I'm going to rattle off everybody's name. Excuse me if I don't know your name. And I'm pretty confident I'm going to get every name. Not as confident that I'm going to mispronounce a name or two.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, he goes, my name is, I'll come back to you. And then everybody in here, but I'm wearing a whistle too. Yeah. Everybody in here. I said, hey, life is tennis. Tennis is life. You won't get the job. You're going to be interviewed. And if you correct the person who's going to interview you, you won't get the job. With names, if you work hard and such, people will eventually know who you are. So that comes from being the youngest of 6. My mother would be thinking about so many different things, like a mother of 6, and got this going and that going. And I mean, she would call me Hoosie. Because it goes Mike, Pat, Matt. She goes Mike, Pat, Matt. And she'd look at me like Hoosie, and I would just smile. And I've had so many people. I remember working with these 2 twins, and I could tell the twins apart. And you work with people, their name, but if you're out there and you've got all those variables with that many people, you're manufacturing your thought process, and you're going pretty quick, and you'll call a kid by the wrong name, and they come up and go, "Hey, I know who you are." But I just always hit him with that. No, you won't get the job. But those things set the tone.
For sure.
Those things set the tone. And at the end of it though, character, it's, when you get people in the room and you start talking about forehands and backhands and brain memory, and the athlete got to deprogram to reprogram, and what's it going to take to make the change. And then also too is the experience, man, just rattle off the kids. Ruhan, how old are you? Chronologically, now that comes from Torben Ulrich, who played tennis until he was like 48. How old are you? Chronologically, physically, spiritually, intellectually? Yeah. And, yes or no, look me in the eye. Does your mother still wake you up in the morning? I said, I'm not assaulting you from a personal standpoint. Yes, she does. And what's this mean? And loser. And I said, I've taught tennis here, there, and everywhere, and I've never been any place where people didn't know what that meant. And you got to go home. This 2 days here, 48 hours of tennis immersion, it means to be a life-changing experience.
And it should be.
But today, the recovery day, today's Monday after some long nights, so some long hours, whatever. So you were in the meeting, and we have, and they did a very good job as student assistants over the weekend, and they're here to improve their game. And we meet, and one boy to round it up is an 11. Another boy to round it up is 11. But if you flipped it, and they went to the track, on the UTR, the boy was 11, he'd be a 6, and the boy was a 6, he'd be an 11, give or take.
Right.
And I said, this is what you guys need to do. You're going to go do this for 45 minutes and do this for 15 minutes. He went through, you go out to the clay courts, and when you come in, make sure you get the clay off your shoes. We should be organized enough when they come here, they have 2 pairs of shoes. And, tennis kids in the States, Canada as well, they show up, they don't have running shoes. They look at you like they're cross-eyed, If you're teaching in Europe, you show up with some running shoes. And, but they didn't do it. They came back, and I met with them and said, okay, what did you do outside? They didn't go outside. And then you and Yvonne were in the meeting, and it's like, hey, different setting,
right.
To go from 35 people, then there's just the 5 of us in a room, great kids, but it's just amazing. I love that line. I've spent my life, it's a little sad, spent my life saying the right things to the wrong people. With Jim Klein, if people were to listen to Ryan Reedy, with your internet search, have you listened to 2 Minute Tennis?
Yeah, he's, I've seen him on YouTube. I've come across his Instagram. I've seen some of his drills. I've seen some of the teachings that he puts out. I'm familiar, yeah.
I'd have to, Ryan, Jim brought him to work with me when he was a kid, and he's a very good player. There's 5,000 colleges. He certainly could have played at some of them. Not the high end, but he was a good player. but he decided to start teaching when he was 18. So he's got a lot of hours in the game. And um, I'd have to look at his material more. I didn't really know that he had drills. I knew that he was doing analysis and stroke production. Um, but all the connections with Jim Klein is the one who really knocked on doors and wrote letters and very responsible for having Vic Braden be inducted in the Tennis Hall of Fame. With the drills, and I actually, let me say this, Jim also orchestrated where I've been nominated to be in the International Tennis Hall of Fame, which, I haven't, from an international standpoint, I know a lot of people would snicker at that, but what the Great Base represents, not me, but what the Great Base represents, if people really knew, like the leaders in just this country, American tennis,
Right.
if they really knew, it's worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. If you just to take Vandermeer, Braden, and Van Horn and put that together, Welby is not in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. It's so sad that people don't really understand his approach. You saw it, just
I
like,
did.
okay, boom. You get 35 people, you blow the whistle, it's like hands on your hips. And you go through it, the body balance position. Okay, now your hands in front. And then your palm represents the racket on the forehand side, your knuckles on the backhand sdo Then you do it with the racket and you go over checkpoints and you go slow. But it's really, studying communication. Like, how do you make that happen? How do you keep everybody's interest? Well, one, you've got their names.
Mm-hmm.
And, then it's, then you, as a comedian, you have to, you take shots at yourself first. I used to be one of you guys. I used to be a teenage boy, most unmanageable animal of them all. Yeah, I'm like you. I went to Jupiter to get stupider. I'm back though. I know you're still there, and people snicker and laugh a little bit, and then right in the very beginning, say, I already know your level. I know your level of play. I mean, in a lot of ways, you can just watch somebody jog around the court. You watch people go through. You watch people stretch.
You watch people skip rope.
Yeah, no, and that was something what we didn't do very much of, but that's ammunition. Okay, you rotate to the ropes, rotate, and you notice that. I didn't have the adults rotate to the rope,
Right. Yeah.
and so you have to be on top of all those little things and say, I saw you skip rope, and you have one in your bag, and Jim Klein, for our listeners, what he did was excellent. He knows where I'm coming from. He has lived it. So he has a bag of notebooks, little half-size notebooks, and he gives everybody a notebook and a pencil. Mm-hmm. And then he collects them. And even that, like, hello, some of the kids weren't sharp enough to take notes. And he was nice. I said, okay, let's review the note-taking. And, gave some positive feedback, gave some negative feedback, and to hear it's to forget it, to write it down is to remember it, to do it over and over again is to understand it. I think the one word though is application. So our listeners, to describe it, that's where we have to get better. We need to fundraise. It's a beautiful setting. We can look right through the door, the room we're in right now. We've got a balcony looking over 3 tennis courts, and we should have filmed that clinic. It really comes right down to it. We don't have the funds. We need a little more manpower.
Right.
And, we're asking for people to donate $10 a month. I need to knock on some doors and make some phone calls, and we need to take it to a higher level. I do have some millionaire friends that have some billionaire friends. And I always tell a story where photo of John McEnroe sitting next to Larry Ellison on one side and Bill Gates on the other side. And if they knew what could be done for tennis. But tennis cannibalizes. Tennis eats tennis up, where they're at the bottom of the triangle. For me, people say, okay, what's your favorite type of tennis teaching? I would say PE classes, phys ed classes. Mm-hmm. They're there just for the credit. There's no ego. There's no parents. There's no competition. It's for years on the Tyler Junior College campus, we were in charge of PE classes. And, you know, it's sad that the PE teachers, I mean, only one in a decade. They just loved it. They knew we'd teach the class. Some of them didn't even show up at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they would say, they just want to make sure, well, we took attendance, and they would leave. They knew we were teaching the class. And now that's just one thing about PE classes. You know, you're going to get an A or B. You know, no one's going to fail a PE class.
Right.
At that time, in that situation. But to, like say, to go out and teach 20 people, you know, it'd be more than that, more like 30 people by yourself. You know, we could break it down. It could be 30 private lessons, because at one point we had over 100 students. But to take 30 PE students, and that's where it comes from, where, okay, on the serve, pizza position, pull down. You know, just put it in 3, 1, 2, 3. That's where it becomes an art form. Now it's salute position, twist up. And, you know, that's where, you know, it's like pounding nails. If you pound nails, you pound nails. If you don't pound nails, you don't pound nails. You can't, you know, you can just tell, does someone have the skill? But let me just describe one drill for listeners. Is you got to get people to hit a lot of balls. And there are different skill levels. So we got 6 feeders, and of the 6 feeders, Jim brought a couple pros. That certainly helped. We had 2 student assistants. And the old thing you hear all the time on this podcast, if you could feed breadcrumbs to a pigeon, you can feed tennis balls.
Right.
And then you teach the dimensions of the court, and they know the alley. So you got one feeder on one side of the court, one feeder on the other side of the court. And I was telling the few of you in a meeting afterwards, if you get some athletes, for 3 hours, it's going to be a marathon. We're going to run for 3 hours. You know, approach shot volley. So you go up one side of the court, you got to run the other side of the court, and it just keeps going and going and going, and there's plenty of space. And so we took 3 courts, and all of a sudden it was like we had 6 courts. And then we had 4 people in a group. You go, okay, there's 8+ on a court. But then people were going to another station to fill out a form or get a grip sticker put on. And but the one thing too is that you got them. If you filmed them, the Vic Braid thing, you got them.
You got them, yeah.
You know, there's this famous story with Bob Lutz. People need to hear it over and over again. So Bob Lutz, an amazing player. You know, Stan Smith, Bob Lutz. You know, right there to be the best doubles team in the world at one time. And Vic in Southern California, he knew the Lutz family. You know, he never coached Bob Lutz, but he knew how he played. And he said, hey, I want to film your underspin backhand. This is back when he's doing PBS commercials. And Bob Lutz said, no, I disagree with the way you teach it. Vic was very disappointed, and he hung up. He called him right back. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll film you, and then I'll just describe to the listeners how you hit it. He said, okay, fine. Mm-hmm. Vic hung up the phone and said, I got him.
Okay.
Because pros don't know, they don't say what they do or do what they say. You know, for the most part, pros, you know, it was taken down. Malcolm Gladwell wrote Outliers. Canadian author. There was on a YouTube clip where he connected with Braden. I think if you read the book Blink, knowing without knowing, thinking without thinking. So, so what Malcolm Gladwell said is that the top touring pros, they have absolutely no idea how they hit a forehand. But society, people just think that they know how to hit a forehand. Substance versus sizzle. I think there's too much of that, where there's too much promotion in tennis. But the substance, like Braden at the end, can they hit it? Can they hit it? Any questions for you, for us? I know the internship, you have almost 4 more weeks. We're going to go to North Carolina State. That's going to be a different type of clinic. There's a company called Tennis Block. I met with Jackson Bowen, who is running the company, founded the company. He's hired Ryan Fleming, somebody that we trained. They have 125 people. I think it's just in the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. I don't really like the word pedigree, but they don't have the pedigree as 125 plus coaches. The bulk of them, they teach at municipalities, teach at park and recs. But I know we have people coming from different parts of the country, and that's the one thing is that, we're not really marketing it. I think we put it on Facebook or a mass email, but that'll be a different experience for you.
Yeah. Just also wanted to like mention something I didn't say earlier. My experience coming in and my whole thought process of I'm just gonna shadow somebody and just follow them around, and they're gonna be on the court 24/7. It's really not like that. You get to experience the tennis life. You get to be around juniors. You train like a junior. I mean, I've never played on a college team. I've never even been to a facility where there's college players, and just getting an opportunity to go with you and some of the other guys here to the University of Virginia tennis facility. That was something I've never done. It was great. I would recommend it to any junior if they're given an opportunity to go and just see the facility, see the posters, see the trophy room, see the pro shop. And if there's nobody even playing there, no problem. But we were, privileged to visit there and to see some former students of yours and some future players that are going to be playing and that are going to be on the team. So that was great. I mean, the facility itself, the campus, that being very close by here, I never even expected that, right?
Yeah, for our listeners, Charlottesville, pretty town. I had never been there. Now when people fly in, we've had people fly into Lynchburg, Richmond, Baltimore, mostly Washington. They find out it's cheaper to fly into Washington and drive a car, but we're picking people up at Charlottesville. And I had never been to Ozarks, right?
Right.
No, Boar's Head.
Yeah, that's right, Boar's Head.
And wow, outdoor facility, the indoor facility, it's like, wow, the place is so nice. We had a player from Montreal with us and a player taking a lesson. One of the girls on the team was from Montreal, and the assistant coach is someone that went through our training, but she observed what Matt Clore and Chris Clore and I were doing for 2 years at NC State. But I was in communication with her briefly today about a gal that's been part of the GreatBase really from the time she was a beginner. But for college tennis, young kids need to see college tennis
For sure.
and to go to. That's definitely a different setting because it's away from the campus, not very far, but a lot of times it is Division I school here in the U.S. I tell people it's like an Olympic Village, and it's like wow. And you just tell people, I don't think junior tennis players overall are prepared to play college tennis. I talked to Dave Secker today, and he was talking about Glenn Bassett. I had a chance to meet Glenn, have his book. I remember being at UCLA matches when I lived in California. Like, wow. I mean, I was just in awe of being on the UCLA campus. And it's big time sports. I tell people, I had a young guy from Dusseldorf and took him to Gainesville to see the University of Florida. And I mean, I was like a little kid too, in the sense that time we went, Billy Donovan, the basketball coach. So we get to go hang out and watch the basketball. It's a gym workout. And the Yannick Noah's kids on the team at the time. Pretty sure I got that straight. I'd been up there when he was there. But I lived in Tampa, so that was the best place to go to see big time college tennis. And I remember the young German player. He was just amazed that all the players they could just come in, open up the refrigerator and whatever was called muscle milk or whatever. It's just amazing what young people are impressed by. And, they obviously they're young, so they miss out on quite a bit when they go and see a facility like that. But that's where, so many things. So a young player I mentioned, say a 6 on the UTR, someone's a 10. I just tell you love tennis. You see yourself playing. They have these 35 and over terms. You see yourself playing tennis. Yes. They would be better off to get pumped up about club tennis, which is most college teams or most colleges have a club team. There's no coach. They raise their own funds,
Right.
and then just be resourceful, and then just get better. Just get better, and you just have to know the process. And if you have a late start and a bad start, I had a late start, and I was working nights and taking lessons, and the more I read and the more I observed, I met a lot of great people. But I mean, I just have total recall. I didn't learn tennis at 9.
Mm-hmm.
How I was taught. A hockey player hangs onto a hockey stick. The top hand is continental, the bottom hand is Eastern.
That's right.
So it's right away, you're pretty well set for the backhand. And I started hitting this 2-handed backhand volley, and I could hit it. And I remember being told, no, you got to hit one-handed. You got to slice. You got to cut down on it. Okay. So paying money and working hour after hour and trying to just hit it the wrong way. And I one time was at a famous academy I was paid to. I just called the academy up. People could figure out, a couple academies in Florida are so big. And I said, no, I can make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Called up academy, say, I'd like to have you think about creating a program. A group of Japanese coaches will come over. If you could customize a price, we'll come to your place and observe for 3 days. And so I did on that side of it. We go to a famous academy. I got a group of Japanese players, Japanese coaches. And there was a young boy at this famous academy that I'd coached. This goes back to the 90s. And the kid had won national 12s. Not level 1, but by that time they had level 2 and 3. So he had won a national title, level 2. He went on and played Division 3 tennis, but right before my eyes, he was on the center court working with one of the name coaches, and they were changing his volley. Now, granted, you could change from 2-handed to 1-handed, but he was just being told the same thing I had been told 25 years before.
Right.
And it's like the BS just doesn't stop. The myths just go on and on. And but no, it's great to have you here. Anything else?
No, nothing.
No questions, comments, suggestions?
No, I think the weekend went well. Large numbers. You handled them pretty good. The help that we had.
Pretty good means pretty bad,
Okay. I take that back then. You handled it great. The student coach help that we had was really helpful as well. And I got to learn. I've never been in a situation where there was that many people on just 3 courts. And to see someone orchestrate the whole thing without any hiccups and without any long periods or awkward pauses throughout any of the drills was great. I'm inspired by it, and I hope that when my time comes and when I'm given an opportunity to run something like that, and I'll be able to deliver the same.
Well, 1, get a whistle. 2, just the fact that we have this place with 8 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, just the fact that, like you're there and you do the dishes. You don't even, probably not even aware of what you do, but that's from your upbringing. That's from, just the struggle. I mean, I could not even fathom, like my father was in World War II, and all the kids I grew up with, their fathers in World War II, and, the greatest generation. And I'm a baby boomer, and it's like, whoa. But you're starting in tennis. You're like Raven Klassen was interviewed last week, and he goes, well, in tennis, I'm old, but for my new profession, I'm only 40. I'm young. Mm-hmm. But you never want to second guess yourself, everything that you've done in the past. Actually, in tennis teaching, tennis coaching, the bar is very low. The one thing that you'll like so many of us have to overcome, Bud Collins, the late Bud Collins. There's 2 types of tennis players: those who play at Wimbledon and those who don't. And the people who play well, they get prestigious jobs, and the consumer. We talked about this. That was one question that was asked. I mean, people have heard me say this before. The Orange Bowl is coming up. Mm-hmm. Eddie heard before that. And you walk around, and there's some kids nowadays that are homeschooling, especially the boys, and you pretty much can just look at their service motion and you go, they're not going to be able to play pro tennis. But a fallback, because they can play a little bit, is Joe Public, the consumer. They'll blindly write checks, and the boy becomes a glorified sparring partner. And that's how many people start the coaching profession. They don't do what you're doing right now, and to seek someone out and come and listen and observe. With interns, I have a tape we're going to play right now from an intern. He was on, Fergus O'Rourke, a good Irishman. Let's listen to this for a second, because it's 2 minutes. You like Johnny Cash?
Yeah.
Let's see if I'm good on my phone here. Well, I'm going to have to get help. Let's pause for 1 second. Machine is only smart as its operator. All right, Fergus O'Rourke. What a Renaissance man.
Let's hear it.
I'm just a dumb jock.
Since I don't know when, but I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But the train keeps rolling on down to San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy and don't ever play with guns. When I shot a man in Reno, just to watch him die. And I hear the whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry.
Johnny Cash.
Smoking big cigars, well I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free, but those people keep moving, and that's what tortures me.
If I can turn the phone off here. Fergus O'Rourke, what do you think?
Not bad.
Not bad. I think it's excellent. Of course, I one time was asked by one of my buddies, I was 20 and he was 70. And he asked me to help get his son off drugs. And remember him saying, how's my son doing? I said, it's great. He's over at my place. He's smoking pot all day. Because I thought you were getting him off drugs. I said, I've got him off hard drugs. But he went on, this young guy, and he became a studio musician. And I one time was with his father and father, son in a pub, and I said, "The guy's really good on the guitar." And he goes, "He can play 3 notes." So I one time was hitting tennis balls and with Johan Creek warming him up, and I was so embarrassed because it was at a pro tournament. I came off the court and people asked me for my autograph. I said, I'm not in a tournament. I'm just warming him up. But Fergus O'Rourke, he's going to listen to this, and his parents have helped him as siblings. I believe he's the youngest of 6, fact checker. He has very good verbals, very good vocabulary, the Irish education system. I used to do this because I knew kids would be taking the SATs. And I understand they don't have the vocabulary test on the SAT anymore. And I know now some schools are not even making students take the SAT because of the pandemic, Scholastic Aptitude Test. But I used to have kids they had to come with one when traveling. One, I mean, people are being housed by us, anti-academy, and not a big operation, but 2 vans filled with tennis players, and each day they had to have a new vocabulary word. There's so many things that have gone away. We used to actually have journals, collect journals, read the journal the night before. So the standard's gone down. We used to have people do lunges picking up 1 and 1. Now we'll go 3 and 3 jogging backwards. People come to visit and they go 3 and 3, but there was picking up 1 and 1, one ball in your left hand, one ball in your right. Then it was 2 and 2. Now it's 3 and 3. And I said, pretty soon we're going to just pick the balls up for the kids. My mother was pulled out of school and worked for the War Department. She just read all the time. I had an uncle who read all the time. But I used to, with my friends, say, okay, we had a dictionary. It's not like we did it all the time, but I remember doing it with my mother and said, we won't pick one word in the dictionary which she doesn't know the definition of it. And, but yeah, Fergus is a Renaissance man. I'm a dumb jock, but because you're an intern, I didn't tell you, now you have to sing. Can you sing the Canadian national anthem for us?
I don't know if I know all the words.
I'm just teasing. But we do have kids. I got you. We have kids. Okay, sing a song, tell a clean joke, tell a story, and kids have stage fright. So you want to try to get kids to break their comfort zone.
Right.
And a young girl who ended up playing college tennis on a scholarship, in Canada, they still sing the national anthem every day in school, right?
When I was in school, yeah,
So
they had it up on the PA system.
half in English, half in French, and you're getting locked up and being stubborn. She goes, "I don't know it." I go, "Yeah, you do." And at that time, I knew. But you have to teach people to overcome nerves. You're a little nervous coming here. You're not nervous now?
No, I'm good now.
All right.
I was a little
All
bit
right.
shook when we first began, but now I'm good.
The next time we'll do a podcast we certainly could do it on the end of your internship. We could do it following going to NC State. But when we go to NC State, I've been at NC State. It comes down to the men's team. Excuse me. I worked with a player for 4 months, and the way I talked to him is not the way I talk to most players. Beck Bond. I spent some time in the Northeast. He's from the Northeast. His junior year, he wasn't in the lineup. His senior year, he lost 1 match.
Wow.
He lost 1 match in the ACC. But the way I talked to him, okay. So he had gone to a little private school in New England, and he played football. I said, "That's not football. That's not football." I said, "I've been to a private school in New England. That's not football. It's not like, he played a big powerhouse high school but just, can you take coaching?" And, he took it to a pretty high level. Certainly that was not part of, that's something that you haven't observed in your 8 days here. But again, I think that even if it's the same thing, well, every day is different, but learning to teach tennis is embrace the boredom. I remember watching Robert Lansdorp and young Elliot Telscher, who's younger than me, and I remember him telling me, I met him years later. He attended a workshop that I was running in Southern Cal. And, at one time he was in charge of America, the USTA player development. Great player. I remember watching him play at UCLA. Remember him, when I was watching Lansdorp teach tennis, I remember just saying, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, to just go and watch people teach." With, my son Connor, I'd be at a place where he'd be playing college tennis, even where he played at Florida State before he transferred to Ohio State, is I'd watch the doubles, and then I'd go watch the tennis teaching on the other side. Because actually, if you know tennis, you could watch the drama of the whole match, but from a learning standpoint, if you see 20 points, you've seen the match.
Right.
You don't, the drama, the sensationalism, the climax, how does that match end? Who wins or who loses? But if you've seen him play 20 points, you've seen him play. Parents, I say all the time, is that hey, if you to most kids, you know, they 6'3", 6'3", you win, 6'3", 6'3", you lose, you play the same way. You know, your emotions, maybe you're a little bit better because you got off to an early start, but how you play is how you play. This is your forehand. This is your backhand. And I guess we get in with saying that, but that's the curse is people wrapped up in winning and not in fundamentals. But Alex, great to have you here. I hope our listeners got something out of this. I know I did. Wave goodbye to the camera. Podcast 167 is in the books. Thanks for listening. And I hope we've, the 10 commandments of forehands and backhands. We don't need the 11th commandment. We just need to get the message out that Lombardi, you know, I had so many people tell me they love the podcast on Lombardi. You know, I had one person tell me that I think you should go another way with that, but in training coaches, we can turn to other sports to learn about other sports. But fatigue makes cowards of us all. You're not tired, right?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay.
I'm hanging in there.
I did yell that out a lot of times. You know, so you're working with people at 6 a.m. That means they probably got up at 5, and now it's 9 o'clock at night. And you're still on the court. Everybody yell out, "I'm not tired. I'm not tired," because you know they're tired. So yeah, a few tricks for group dynamics. But anyway, everybody, thanks a lot. Adios, amigos. Next time. Thanks, Alex. Thanks,
you.
listeners.